What if I told you there's a plant growing right now in nearly every climate on Earth that contains more complete protein than beef, more bioavailable calcium than milk, and more iron than any vegetable in your garden? A plant so nutritionally dense that a single cup of cooked grain delivers all 9 essential amino acids in ratios that rival expensive supplements. A plant that grows in depleted soil, thrives without fertilizer, produces food in under 90 days, and yields multiple harvests per season from a single planting. And what if I also told you this plant has been systematically vilified, legally suppressed, and deliberately removed from mainstream agriculture for 6 decades? By the end of this video, you'll understand why. You'll understand the machinery behind this oppression. And you'll understand why reconnecting with this plant is one of the most practical steps toward genuine food independence. Welcome back. I'm your host. If you're new here, this is the channel where we investigate plants that industrial agriculture, regulatory bodies, and corporate food systems have deliberately pushed into obscurity. Plants that make people independent. Plants that the system doesn't want scaling up. If you're serious about food security, hit subscribe. What we're building isn't just another channel. It's a network of people reclaiming self-reliance. Now, let's talk about amaranth. Not the decorative variety in ornamental gardens. I'm talking about the grain amaranth, Amaranthus cruentus, Amaranthus hypochondriacus, and Amaranthus caudatus, the species that fed millions for thousands of years. The crop that the Aztecs considered sacred enough to include in their most important ceremonies. And the crop that was nearly erased from human agriculture within 3 generations. Here's what most people don't know. A single serving of amaranth grain, just 1 cup cooked, contains 9.3 grams of complete protein. That's more protein than a comparable serving of ground beef. But the comparison gets better. Amaranth delivers all 9 essential amino acids in a ratio remarkably close to what your body needs for muscle development, immune function, and enzymatic processes. Beef has all 9 amino acids too. But beef doesn't contain what amaranth does. 65% of your daily magnesium in 1 serving. Magnesium that's highly bioavailable. Magnesium that most people are severely deficient in. That same serving delivers 36% of your daily iron, 27% of your manganese, and complete B-complex vitamins including B6 and folate. Repeat that. Complete protein. Complete micronutrient profile. Single serving. Most vegetables require combinations, spinach plus legumes plus grains, to create nutritional completeness. Amaranth does it alone. This is why historical cultures didn't treat it as a side crop. They treated it as a pillar. The Inca, the Aztec, cultures in Nepal, Peru, and across Africa understood that amaranth was food security in seed form. Then, starting in the 1960s, amaranth production crashed. Not because of market forces, not because better crops emerged, because governments made the decision to suppress it. In Mexico, the government classified amaranth as a restricted crop. The reasoning was that it had been used in ceremonial practices, specifically in blood ceremonies, and the government decided the plant needed to be eliminated to prevent indigenous cultural practices they deemed undesirable. This wasn't about nutrition. This was about cultural erasure. About control. In the United States, amaranth grain was effectively removed from agricultural markets through FDA regulatory channels. The process was subtle. There were no explicit bans. Instead, regulatory bodies created classification ambiguities around amaranth as a food crop versus an ornamental. They required expensive testing and certification that small farmers couldn't afford. The result was the same. Amaranth disappeared from supermarkets, from agricultural subsidies, and from the consciousness of people who might have grown it. Meanwhile, corn and soy, crops that require heavy inputs of water, fertilizer, and pesticides, receive subsidies measured in billions of dollars. Crops dependent on industrial agriculture, crops that create dependency. This pattern isn't unique to amaranth. It's systemic. The machinery of food control works like this. Plants that require minimal inputs, that grow anywhere, that make people independent. These plants threaten the profit structure of industrial agriculture. When a farmer can feed themselves and their family on 3 pounds of seeds planted once per season, they're no longer customers for fertilizer companies, seed companies, or pesticide manufacturers. Governments enforce these systems through regulation, through classification, through the slow, bureaucratic erasure of alternatives. Amaranth is re-emerging now, not because governments changed their minds, but because people are tired of dependency. Let's talk about why you can grow this tomorrow. Amaranth requires zone 3 to 11 viability, meaning if you're growing anything, you can grow amaranth. It tolerates poor soil, depleted soil, soil that conventional crops won't touch. Heavy clay, sandy loam, nutrient-poor substrate, amaranth adapts. It doesn't require fertilizer, though it will benefit from compost. It doesn't require consistent watering. A single amaranth plant can produce between 40,000 to 60,000 seeds. One plant, one season, 40,000 to 60,000 seeds. Growth timeline, germination to harvest, is 70 to 100 days, depending on variety. You can plant in spring, harvest in late summer, and the seed stores for years. Dried seed maintains viability for 5 to 8 years in proper storage. One planting feeds a family grain component for the entire year. And that single planting costs you the price of seeds, usually between 50 cents and $2 per packet. The harvest method is simple. When seed heads turn dark and dry, and they will because amaranth is aggressive, you cut the head, hang it upside down in a paper bag, and let seeds fall. No miscegenity, no special equipment. 15 minutes of work yields a year's grain. You can also eat the leaves. Amaranth greens. High in oxalates when raw, but cooked they're tender, nutrient-dense, and taste similar to spinach but milder. Multiple harvests from the same plant. Some gardeners report 3 to 4 leaf harvests before grain maturity without impacting seed yield. This is the efficiency that industrial agriculture cannot match. And this is precisely why it was suppressed. Compare this to corn. Corn requires annual seed purchases because most commercial corn is hybrid. Nitrogen fertilizer at rates of 150 to 200 pounds per acre. Consistent water management, pest management, machinery for harvest. The cost structure locks farmers into dependency. That's the point. Amaranth breaks that dependency. Now, the suppression didn't work. Amaranth never truly disappeared. It survived in small farming communities in Peru, Bolivia, Mexico, and Nepal. It continued growing in household gardens among people who understood its value. And starting in the 1980s, researchers began documenting what indigenous cultures already knew. Amaranth is one of the most nutritionally complete plants on Earth. The National Academy of Sciences published research in the 1980s specifically recommending amaranth as a solution to global malnutrition. Not theoretical malnutrition, actual malnutrition affecting millions of children. Their conclusion, amaranth grain, when combined with common legumes, provided complete nutrition at a fraction of the cost of meat or dairy-based solutions. NGOs working in food security zones, East Africa, South Asia, parts of Central America, began distributing amaranth seed stock not because it was new, but because it worked where nothing else did. In Kenya, community-based agriculture programs documented that households growing amaranth alongside traditional crops increased caloric and protein intake by 40% with no additional water or inputs. In Peru, researchers tracking food insecure communities found that households with access to amaranth seed showed significantly better child development outcomes, lower rates of stunting, and better immune function compared to control groups. The data is consistent. The plant works. But this knowledge remained siloed. It stayed in NGO reports and academic journals. It didn't reach mainstream agriculture because mainstream agriculture is structured to prevent exactly this kind of independence. That's changing now. And it's changing because of 3 factors you need to understand. First, food prices are rising. Not theoretical prices. Real prices. Grain costs have increased 40% in the past 3 years. Protein costs are climbing faster. People are calculating the actual cost of industrial food systems and asking basic questions. If I can grow complete nutrition in my backyard for $5 in seed, why am I spending $300 per month on grocery stores? Second, soil degradation is accelerating. Conventional agriculture has depleted soil in most developed countries. Farmers are discovering that plants like amaranth actually improve soil health rather than deplete it. It's a plant that works with stressed ecosystems rather than against them. Third, information is decentralized. You're watching this video. Thousands of others are watching similar videos. The knowledge that governments tried to contain is now distributed across a network that they can't control. Seed trades between gardeners. Information spreads through networks. The suppression strategy, which worked in a centralized media environment, doesn't work anymore. Here's what happens next. Over the next 5 to 10 years, you'll see amaranth reintegration into mainstream agriculture. Not because governments suddenly support it, but because consumer demand forces it. Seed companies are already noticing. Small-scale farmers are already experimenting. Food security organizations are actively distributing it in vulnerable regions. When food prices spike, and they will, people will remember that amaranth exists. They'll remember that their ancestors grew it. They'll want seeds. This is why I'm telling you now. This is why you should have seeds stored. This is why you should plant amaranth this coming season. Think about this practically. $5 an amaranth seed produces 40,000 seeds. Each of those seeds can grow into a plant. One of those plants feeds a person the protein equivalent of a month's beef consumption. Do the math. $5 creates the equivalent of $600 in meat protein. But that's not the full picture. That same plant provides calcium, iron, magnesium, B vitamins, and phytonutrients that meat doesn't provide. You're not just replacing protein. You're replacing an entire category of supplements. A family of 4 needs about 1/4 acre of amaranth to cover grain nutrition for the year. 1/4 acre. That's the size of a large garden. Most people have that space available or could make it available. Once you're past year 1, you don't buy seeds anymore. You let some plants go to full seed maturity, harvest those seeds, dry them, store them. Every subsequent year requires no external input except maybe water during extreme drought. This is food independence. This is the kind of resilience that governments cannot regulate away once it's in your soil and your storage. The suppression of amaranth worked for 60 years because information was controlled, because supply chains were controlled, and because people had no alternative. None of those conditions exist anymore. What concerns governments and corporations now isn't the existence of amaranth. It's the speed at which this knowledge spreads. It's the fact that you can watch this video, order seeds online, and be growing food independence in your backyard within 90 days. That speed terrifies the system because it's outside the system's control. That's what we do here. We accelerate the knowledge. We distribute the seeds. We normalize the conversation around plants that create independence. This is the future that regulatory bodies try to prevent. They failed. So here's what you do now. First, acquire amaranth seed. Multiple varieties if you can. Different varieties have slightly different growing profiles and flavor characteristics. Buy seed from small seed companies, from indigenous seed networks, from NGOs that distribute freely. Source redundancy matters. You want seed from multiple places. Second, plant this season. Don't wait. Every season you wait is a season of unnecessary dependency. Plant small if you're uncertain. A single row teaches you the plant's behavior. A single row produces enough seed for next year's 1/4 acre. Third, when you harvest, keep meticulous notes. Germination rate, growing time, yield, water requirements. Document your climate zone's performance. This information becomes more valuable than the seed itself because it's localized knowledge. It's what your region actually produces. Fourth, save seed aggressively. Let your best plants go to full maturity. Let seeds dry completely on the plant. Harvest when seed heads are brittle. This selection pressure, allowing best plants to reproduce, continuously improves yield and adaptation to your specific ecosystem. Fifth, share. Give seed to neighbors, to family, to friends experimenting with gardens. This is how the network strengthens. This is how suppression fails. When seeds are distributed through human networks rather than corporate channels, no regulation can contain them. Here's what you're actually protecting yourself against: food price volatility, supply chain disruption, loss of purchasing power, nutritional deficiency in processed food systems. These aren't theoretical risks. They're actively happening. Amaranth isn't prepper mythology. It's practical resilience. And crucially, it's not fringe. It's not experimental. The Inca fed empires on this plant. The Aztec built civilization on this plant. We have literally thousands of years of evidence that this works. The 60-year suppression was an anomaly, a temporary moment when industrial agriculture had enough control to remove alternatives. That moment is ending. What we're seeing now is the return to what actually works. Plants that feed people, plants that make people independent, plants that no government, no corporation, no system of control can ultimately suppress because they're encoded in living seed. Amaranth is just the beginning. You'll find resources in the description: seed sources, growing guides, preservation methods, everything you need to move from grocery store dependency to genuine food independence. If you've grown amaranth or you're starting this season, comment below. Tell your story. These comments are where the real knowledge lies. They're where growers share regional specifics, varieties that worked, challenges they overcame. They're where the network strengthens. This is how we build a food system that cannot be controlled by forcing it to be a system that controls itself. I'll see you in the next video. Keep your seed stores deep. Keep your network close. We're just getting started.